Hello and welcome to my 17Lands early data review for Outlaws at Thunder Junction. Today I'm going to be looking at the early data. I'm going to be checking it out and be looking at stuff, sort of a high-level overview of how things are looking, 1 week into the format. I like to think it's sort of a good, check-in point, and I do this for every set. So without further ado, I usually like to start with the tech color data. This is not really a two color per se format, but it is good to look often at the two color pairs to see where things are at, and we can see clearly that Selesnya for all users is performing the best, that at 59%, close to 60%, when ready to clear 2% higher than the next best deck, which is Golgari. Interestingly enough, doesn't happen very often. It is also played the most, which is what happens. People know what's up at this point. It is the best deck, I think. I would agree with that. But yeah, after that, there you sort of have this like tier of Golgari, Gruul, Boros are sort of always in there. Simic's kind of in there, and there's just kind of like this muddled whatever mess of the rest of it. Let's see, Izzet is the worst color so far, which doesn't surprise me. I haven't had. I mean, this is, for full transparency, has been my worst format like 2 years to start. I would say it's been a long time since I've had a performance that has been this bad to start. Which is not to say that it's even been terrible. I'm still winning about 60% of my games, but that is low for me. That is low in best of one for me to be winning only 60%. So I certainly have struggled with the early format. Information. It's been a very difficult format to wrap my head around, and we'll take a look at the top users, color pair wise, see if there's anything different. And often, what we see here is that things flatten out. We see Selesnya at 62, and we see Orzhov at 61. Sample size is obviously a lot smaller, but we do see that the colors for top users generally tend to flatten out, especially at the top. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Archetypes I would consider to sort of be in that top player, top tier in terms of win rate from a two color perspective. And yeah, the only real things I would stay away from are blue white and blue red. Though again, I think they're I think everything is draftable in this format once people have corrected. But for me, it's just kind of it's a different format. It's certainly a format that rewards different things than has been rewarded for a long time. I do feel like it is, March of the Machine was the last, Dave Humphries designed set, I think, and this format does actually in many ways remind me of that format for me early, where week 1, I have a good idea of what's going on. Week, at the end of week 1, beginning of week 2, I was very lost in that format, and I feel sort of in a similar position here. I did eventually, figure it out, and expect that will happen. Good to watch other good players, that are having success, right, and all that stuff. You'll see the top player win rate for this format is 58.7, which is, I believe, a little bit low. If you were to look at MKM, I think it's a little bit higher. I didn't pre-check this. It is. And this is over the course of the entire format, where you would expect this number to be a lot lower. Top players are winning at about, 1% less per, overall. And that tracks with my experience. I certainly have felt that it is, a format that is, potentially more card quality focused than previous formats. I would say that, in my experience, this is the most Prince format I've ever played, even more than like a Crimson Vow, which we can go look at actually right now, just to check. Actually, top users didn't exist in Crimson Vow, did they? This was in the era before top users, so I don't have information on that. But that's the most comparable in terms of princeliness early, and that's it. So we sort of looked at your good decks are kind of your green based whatever. It really is just kind of green stuff, and there is the idea of the multicolor for top users. Still Selesnya Splash at the top here. We see that. We see the just all the green splash decks are going to be performing well. And for top players, of course, you have the Dimir Splash as well. So Dimir for top players is a deck, and I think that similarly, Rakdos is kind of in this space where like there's the crime thing going on, which again, not something I've had a lot of success with personally, but you know, I have seen it work. And now we're going to move on to the common, or actually, you know what? I should go check at format speed really quickly. Hold on. To the format speed, everybody's favorite infographic. All right, please, let me click on the thing. We'll see that OTJ is right in line with the formats that came before it. This is kind of just where sets are these days. You'll see it's right next to March of the Machine, it's right next to Murders of Carla Manor, it's right next to LCI. So what I want to say in regards to this is there's been a lot of talk about this format being slow, grindy, whatever, and that may be valid. But what I do want to caution people against is saying that is using this graph to indicate anything meaningful, essentially. If you are one of those people that is sort of like a complainer about limited format speed, and you have used this graph to make that complaint, and you are somebody that also believes that this format is slow, I would just like you to stop using this graph to say that like format is bad because of where it is on this graph. You know what I mean? Like I think that argument loses a lot of validity as a result of where OTJ appears on this graph. And I would personally like people to stop doing that. You will also notice that it is a 53%, win rate on the play set. Something that people complain about a lot. A lot of people complain about that. For some reason, I'm not hearing it in this format. I don't know why I'm not hearing those complaints as much. It doesn't really make any sense to me. The data says that your, on the play win rate is about the same as it was in Murders of Carla Manor. People thought this format was really swingy. People thought this format, I don't know. I don't get it personally. So, it's just a little bit of a soapbox moment for me there in terms of, format speed being indicated by the turn length graph. And yeah, I mean, like I talked about, we are going to be looking at some commons, and overall we see in the top, top 5, bunch of commons by game in hand win rate, which again is my preferred stat for evaluating card power level. There are people that disagree on what the preferred stat for evaluating card power level is. I personally feel that it's game in hand win rate. There are some people that would argue for opening hand. I politely disagree. Personally, so I will be looking at game in hand for the duration of this this video, and we can see that a lot of Abzan stuff showing up in here, and that's what I've had a lot of success with personally. The only success I've had in this format is with Abzan sort of decks, but one of the things you will notice about this format is that it is not really common centric. If you've played it, you'll notice that 2 of the most winning commons are actually lands, which I think is actually pretty indicative of this. It also indicates significant color imbalance, which is something that I have felt early, although I think will continue to rectify over time. We do see the 3 Abzan ping lands in the top 3. I believe you have to go all the way down to Phantom Interference to find the first non-Abzan card at common, which is a pretty shocking indictment, right? It is a little bit of a shocker there. If we do look at the top users, I believe that it will even out a little bit. Yes, you have Jailbreak Scheme as your top non-Abzan common at 40 or something, and then there's Phantom Interference. But yeah, Jailbreak Scheme, solid card. I think you people are probably underrating this card a little bit at the moment. And I guess we should just look at the colors. So we could start with white and go back to everybody. White's best common, take up the shield, not super surprising. Again, if you're going to be an opening hand individual, Arinx is the best common. I think that's reasonable. I think Arinx being the best is reasonable in this case, just because it's a 2-drop. Like, with cards like take up the shield and we'll see Snakeskin Veil in a bit, it is difficult to have them as your top common of a color, because they rely on you having other cards for them to be functional. So it's kind of this weird, delicate balance, right? Where they are, in terms from a win rate perspective, from a times that they're in your hand perspective, they are great. Now, obviously, take up the shield, not the best opening hand, and this is where some people will tell you again, whatever. It's a good it's just good to keep that in mind, right? There is diminishing returns. There can be stuff going on there. Mystical Tether, Sterling Supplier. I mean, I'm not super surprised. I mean, there's not a lot of surprises, I guess, for me in terms of like the white commons. Everything is sort of played out about where I would have thought. Um, I do think a lot of the stuff is playable, but again, I think the biggest mover up, and actually, this is one of those ones I got right, I believe, in my set review is having Sterling Keykeeper as a playable card. I think a lot of people may have missed it, on this one, but I think I did get this one at like just about right here. Um, Another thing I will note, Sterling Supplier is an archetype of card that is typically underrated and has been underrated. It was underrated in Brothers War. This card is basically an improved version of the card from Brothers War, and um, so yeah, that's notable, right? Like it's a 5-drop. You can't pick your 5-drops highly in the draft. Although in this format, like it's a little different. You kind of can in this format. So I actually might start taking this even a little bit higher than I currently am. I don't really want to spend too much time on the commons because this is not a common based format. In blue, we see Take the Fall actually up here as the third best blue common. I think this is probably closer to some people would have it at the top. I don't know. I agree. All win rates for blue cards are terrible. This is because the cards do not play well without a lot of support, um, and so you know you do need to have the support. And you also see that the blue cards just aren't super, like the commons just aren't really, like, you just look at all these cards and you're like, I don't really like any of these. And that's kind of how I feel about blue generally, is that it's just not super exciting. But yeah, Jailbreak Scheme is a card that I would want to call out as something that maybe is a little undervalued. I do think this card goes extremely late, and we can look at the alsas. It's down here when it probably should be. I will be playing more of that card, is what I would say. I'll be playing more of that card as the format goes on, I think. If I play more of this format, which, dubious at the moment. Take a look at black now. We have Consuming Ashes, the 2 removal spells, Desert Stew, and Consuming Ashes at the top, and Vault Plunderer at number 3. We're basically tied exactly with Desperate Bloodseeker. You will see that black has much better commons than blue. One of the biggest surprises for some people, and I think myself included, is that Skullduggery is down here. I think Skullduggery is basically an unplayable card in this format. I don't think you should play it as a result of it being low impact. It just doesn't. Like, this format is just about bigger things than this. Like, the thing about Skullduggery essentially is this, right? There are decks that care about having a critical number of creatures in your graveyard, in black specifically, and you can only have a certain number of non-creature spells in your deck. And Skullduggery being one of those spells is too low impact of a spell for it to take up one of those spots. One of those spots need to be taken up by the removal spells, like Consuming Ashes, Desert Stew, all that stuff. So it is kind of a problem. Mourner Surprise even. I have issues, I've cut these because it's just like, you can't run more than like after the first copy of this, it does get worse. And then it's just like, it is also not a creature, and it doesn't play well with itself. It's like, it does kind of, do have to worry about taking these cards too highly. Another card to talk about a little bit is Ambush Gigapede. I think this card is decent. I expect to be playing more of it over the course of this format. It just kind of does enough. It's just kind of big. It sort of interacts with something. It just kind of does a little bit of everything, and for that reason, I think it's a playable card. Again, it's an expensive card, so you don't really need to prioritize it, but I think you should play this in decks where you're missing a little bit of top end. On to red now, the color that I've drafted the least for sure, but I'm also the least interested in. And we'll see, again, red's best card winning less than the average win rate for users is bad, right? So data-wise, and on 17 lands, having 2 colors that are performing this bad is actually, at common anyways, hasn't really happened. I mean, you can think about Lord of the Rings, where it was, green and white were kind of unplayable. But even then, it wasn't like, I don't even think it was this. Maybe it was this bad. I'm trying to think about it. At Common, anyways, it was kind of close to this, but that was sort of the last time that we had two colors sort of be in this space, where it's not just like, so you'll have sets where it's like one bad color and then whatever, but sets to have two bad colors is kind of tough. Um, so yeah, Derailment's good. It's a good card. Prickly Pear also a good card, but I think I mean, this card not winning 60% of its games, I mean, it says a lot about the format, right? So it tells me a number of things. One of the things it tells me is red is not a good color in the format because, I mean, we saw this in the last set with the 1 mana 1/1 in white. We saw it. We literally saw like basically this exact card, probably worse than this card in white. I mean, Inside Source in Merge of Karlov Manor, and that card was like the second best white common behind only one of the best white commons they've ever printed. So, like, yeah, I mean, so Prickly Pear should be better, right? Prickly Pear is not a bad card by any means. I don't think it's bad. I think the format context has really done a number on this. But yeah, so red's not good, and just making like three power, three toughness for 3 mana is just not that big in this format, and it's just too small. Like, it's just not doing enough. Like, it's not going big enough, I guess, is kind of the thing. This card goes wide, and there's not a whole lot of like reward for going wide. There's more rewards for going big, I think, perhaps. We see a bunch of other stuff. Wolverine being down here, very interesting. Again, another card that's just like, it draws you a card, but it, like, the body kind of doesn't matter. Like a 3/2 just doesn't really do anything. So yeah, I don't know how to feel about that. And a bunch of stuff that you don't really want to play. This card I think is good, although, yeah. I actually think Deadeye Duelist is also good. I don't know why it's winning so little. I've seen this card be very good against me. So, I don't know. I think these two cards I think are playable. Although, again, I haven't figured out I am certainly not the right person to ask about how to play these red cards, but I certainly think the key to playing red is playing like these two cards, these like two defensive reach guys. That commit crimes. Crimes really is the name of the game with the red cards, I feel. Don't play Rodeo Pyromancers. This card's terrible. And on to green. Green is the best color, especially at common. And we see Throw from the Saddle as your best common in the set. Which, not a huge... I mean, surprising, right? Going into the format, I said Prickly Pear would be the best common. That is not correct. Throw from the Saddle I had in Tier 2, I believe. And I'm pretty happy with that. I think I kind of got that one right. I mean, it's currently in Tier 1. It's operating in the Tier 1 space. There's usually like one or two commons every set that end up in Tier 1. This card currently would be operating in my Tier 1. But yeah, it's just great. It's really efficient removal. It sometimes gives you a +1/+1 counter. It's excellent. Snakeskin Veil is the second best green common from a win rate perspective. Again, similar to the Take Up the Shield thing. It just... You know what I mean? There's just not really... like, you can't really... like, you can't fault it, but you can't have too many. You can't really play 4 copies of this. It becomes too much, right? Big surprise for me, Cat Tarantula at 3. Essentially tied with Spinewoods Paladin, sort of your big 5 drops in green. I'm surprised Patient Naturalist is down. I'm actually not that surprised Patient Naturalist is down there because the guy from Midnight Hunt wasn't even was about this much, and like Patient Naturalist is winning about this much, and it's like fine, whatever. Has its decks where it's great, has its decks where it's not great. But people are picking up on these cards. You know what I mean? You can see that the alces are actually falling here, but the win rates are still very high. Just the thing about green really is that you can play its commons, and like you can't play commons of its other colors. These cards are maybe not super playable, and I've even seen this be okay. But like, I really don't like Ankle Biter. I really don't like this card. Varmint's fine. It's a 2-drop. Bandit's fine and is actively decent in some decks. Grizzly is fine and like good in the mount deck, and you basically shouldn't play it outside of that. Maybe you can play it in red-green. I don't know. I don't think you should play it that much. I don't really like it very much. Dance of the Tumbleweed is another card that I have personally liked a decent amount, especially if you have good deserts to find, like if you have a bucolic ranch or like something like that. It does get a lot better, and I do think this is actually a pretty decent card, and you should play it more maybe than perhaps people are. Although if we look at, let's take a look. I mean, do I have any other? Do I want to talk about? There's no multicolor commons. Any colorless uncommons I want to talk about? The lands, obviously, very high picks. There's pylons. I like pylons quite a bit. I think pylons is good. I did want to talk about, where is it? Or is it an uncommon? Oh, I want to talk about Silver Deputy. Silver Deputy's bad. Don't play Silver Deputy. I have played Silver Deputy in my decks, and it's terrible. Like, do not use this as fixing. It's just not, it's just not reasonable. It's so bad in this format. Oasis Gardener, much better. If you're going to use one of these two cards, definitely play Oasis Gardener instead of Silver Deputy. That's my take. Actually, it's not here. It's in the uncommons. All right, on to uncommons then. I guess we'll talk about the where is it? The uncommon colorless cards are actually somewhat interesting. You've got Mobile Homestead, a card that I actually think is pretty good, and you can play in a wide variety of decks. Bucolic Ranch is probably the best land in the set. In the right deck, in a deck with like any number of mounts, this card is pretty good. Like in green white, especially, this card's great. But even if you only have like 4 mounts, it's a survey. Like the worst case scenario is it's a scry land, and I mean, you can play it. You can get away with playing colorless lands in this format to a certain degree because there's so much fixing. And yeah, another card that's kind of reasonable, Red Rock Sentinel. Kind of don't hate it. Kind of like this guy. Like the format is this is kind of what the format exemplifies. Like this card having a 55% win rate, 60%, 56% win rate really exemplifies to me what why this format is so different. Because in past limited formats, this card would have been terrible. It's a 3-mana 2/4 that does nothing. But in this format, 3-mana 2/4 defender that like does nothing is like fine, and also you just get to start drawing cards in the late game, which matters. Bandit's Hall is another one that I think is totally fine and playable, especially in crime decks. Arid Archway. Don't think you should be playing Arid Archway. I have played Arid Archway. See, it's one of those things where, like, I've played it, it was fine for me, and then I saw the stats on it, and I was like, not gonna play that anymore. Like, I think the first, like, my first deck of the format, I played, like, 2 copies of it and trophied with that deck. And then just, like, haven't really played it since then, and, like, I've done worse, obviously, you can't trophy every time. But I think that was more a product of the card quality than the Arid Archway being great. Although, I don't know, I may experiment with this again. I'm just, I'm a little bit lost in the sauce with this. The rest of that's not super interesting. Alright, actually, back to commons for a second. I did want to go look at the commons by Alsa. So we'll see by Alsa. Hard Bristle Bandits, the lowest green common Alsa. Be advised, don't do that. Don't do this. Then throw from the saddle. There's always some weird ones in here. I always like looking at the Elsas because you do see some weird stuff. But yeah, the green cards are starting to get taken quite highly. And if we look the other direction, stuff that, some value adds potentially. I do think Sterling Hound is kind of playable, although I should stop playing it, I think. I need to stop playing it as much as I'm playing it, although I do think it's, based on where you can draft it. Anything super bad down here? No, not. Fake Your Own Death is maybe a little low. You can see Gigapede's too far down here, probably. But for the most part, not a whole lot. Some value adds in white at the top of the curve, but not super surprising there. This card, Tumbleweed Rising. I love Tumbleweed Rising. I think a lot of its stats because it's green. Alright, on to the uncommons. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of good uncommons in this set. The best of the bunch is Outcaster Greenblade. I mean, this card's just messed up. It's like a 3-mana 4/5 that draws you a card, essentially. That's not, like, really what it is, but, like, it kind of is. If you have, like, a bunch of deserts in your deck. I was not bamboozled. I did not get caught by Buried in the Garden. Last time I was like, oh, nope, this card's not very good. And in my set review this time, I was like, nope, it's going to be great again. And it was great again. Got that one right. We learned from our mistakes on Buried in the Garden. Lassoed by the Law is slightly better. I think I said that even. I think I said the Buried in the Garden would be slightly worse. I don't know. Anyways, they're about the same. They're both really, really good removal spells. At uncommon, you'll notice a lot of green, white, and like stuff up here. Like, yeah, obviously green, white's just really good, and all the green and white uncommons are really good. So it's kind of like more of the same for this format. Like it really is like an Abzan format from a base level perspective. Now, I do think again, like, is there hopium for this format? For me, maybe not. Maybe I'm already a little too far gone. But you just see all these green and white and black uncommons, specifically green, just uncommons. Just like if we look at just the green ones, I'm not even gonna bother looking at some of the other stuff, but just like look at these. Look at this. Like the first green uncommon that I'm like unhappy with is like Betrayal at the Vault. It's like, wow, okay. You know what I mean? Whereas if I were to look at like blue, it's like, or black, even black is just down to like Lively Dirge. It's just not amazing. Murders, like whatever. It only gets like 3 of those. Green has like 5 or 6 premium uncommons. If you look at blue, blue's gonna have like literal 0. I mean, these cards are very good, I do think, but it's and in the right decks, and if you know what you're doing, I think blue is good. Outlaw Stitcher, a notable underperformer in this set. I don't think this card's bad. I don't know why it's. I mean, part of the reason it's winning so little is that blue is bad, but a part of the reason it's winning so little is that again, so this set doesn't follow a lot of the rules of Modern Limited because it's. I mean, it follows some of the rules. One of the rules it follows is games end fast, and but they end fast for different reasons than a normal games ending fast format. So it's yeah. So Outlaw Stitcher again, like just making the 2 bodies just matter so much less in this format than they usually do, and it's more difficult to set up than I think people gave it credit for. There's just kind of a bunch of weird stuff down here that like you don't want to be playing in blue. Anyways, back to sort of the general uncommons. Actually, I want to look at the, hold on, multicolored, the signposts real quick. Just kind of take a look at them because, well, this isn't all signposts, is it? I should have looked beforehand. See the 2 red ones in here, green, red, just all the green stuff. Basically, winning at a somewhat reasonable pace. I do want to talk about Intimidation Campaign as well. So again, there's sort of like these 2 format, decks, 2 types of decks. It's the green decks. Well, actually, I guess there's 3. There's white-green, like actual aggro. It's the only real aggro deck. I think you can play red-white, but it's not even really that. That's not even really an aggro deck. That's kind of a tokeny whatever. Green-white actual aggro is the real aggro deck of the format. There's green-black / Abzan midrange, which is like, gets to play the green cards, but plays a little bit slower. And then there's Grixis Crimes, and Intimidation Campaign is the Grixis Crimes sort of like card, although I don't think you need it. I don't know. This is, again, I haven't really been able to successfully build that deck. We can even go look at like I mean, we can actually, look at the actually, I haven't looked at this yet. Let's look at the top user uncommons. I want to look at multicolor. I guess multicolor's fine. You see a lot of the same stuff, but we also see Lazov in here, right? And so like Lazov being up here for top users, sort of, and then Intimidation Campaign also near the top, right? Like this is sort of what I'm talking about, where like the Crimes deck is sort of a thing, and you can do it. It's just not the easiest thing to do ever. Interested in, yeah, that's kind of it. I don't really have anything. So this card, I mean, I think at Knife Point is probably just, you should just do not play it. It's not the right crime payoff, even for top users. So probably don't play this card. I wasn't planning on playing it anyway, but like don't play it probably, because even the top players can't get it to work. I do think you should play Formal Posse in some instances. Hypothesis was bad. I played that. It was not good. I'll never be playing it again. Terminal Agony's fine. I don't know. It's all sort of in the balance, as they say. For top users, we see the best uncommons are Spellman's Armadillo and Lawbringer. Armadillo is very good, by the way. Armadillo is definitely one of the best commons in the set. It enables so many synergies with from the graveyard. It fetches your deserts. It fixes your mana. Like, it's just a house. I don't know. Do I think it's better or worse than Greenblade? I don't really. It's both. It's better and worse. It's probably better in green black and probably worse in like things that aren't green black. Anything else I really want to look at? We didn't look at the blue uncommons for top users. Maybe something to look at. I mean, again, it's kind of like I haven't even like even me, the guy who like should know what he's talking about, has had a tough one in this format. I will spend some time talking about the rares actually. I think before I go, it is going to be a little bit of a shorter one. I don't know this format for whatever reason. One of the things you'll notice about the rares in this format when you compare to other formats is there's not a standout. There's not a card that wins 70% of its games, which is rare. Now, again, part of that is 17Lands users, I believe. Hold on, we go back to the deck color data really quickly. 54.8, and we look at MKM, and we look at the. Hold on. Feb. Like, just look at the first. When is it from? Feb. Look at the first week of MKM. 55.7 for MKM, 54.8. So again, 17Lands users are winning 1 percentage point lower in this format than they were in the last format. It applies to top users. It applies to every user. It kind of just is like a 1% across the board win rate hit. So cards are going to have lower win rates in this just because of that. So that's definitely part of it. But another thing is that because there are so many strong cards at the top here, I'm just going to kind of scroll over. Like, all of these cards are just messed up. It becomes difficult for any one of them to separate itself and become like the card that is like unbeatable, because all of these cards like basically cancel each other out in terms of how good they are. But yeah, I mean, there's just tons of busted stuff in this format. Like, you just keep going down the line here. Just every single one of these cards is insane. Wow, look at Morbid Opportunist. Look at you. I can't believe. I mean, Morbid Opportunist still doing it in a format that's much more hostile to it exactly is kind of wild. Kind of wild to see Morbid Opportunist still crushing. Now, obviously, it has like 0 games because it's a list card, but card's still sick. Be advised. One of the biggest upgrades of all time, moved from uncommon to mythic, and honestly, kind of warranted based on its performance in Midnight Hunt. One of the best cards in that format. Pest Infestation, great as well. Pest Infestation has a lot of targets in this format, so that is something to note. Praise you be. So yeah, some of the list cards still don't really have data yet, but the ones that do have a little bit are up here. And that's it. That's kind of all I got in this format. There's a lot of rares. They're very strong. They're very powerful. They're impacting the game significantly. We could see their impact on the data. We could see, that the win rates have been compressed, right? The better players are winning less in this format than they typically do, by a not insignificant margin, given that it's week 1. We'll see if that rebounds over time. It usually does, but we'll see. So I do think there is some bombing. Like, the format is certainly a Prince format, as I was mentioning earlier. We can see that here. Just so many rares that are just game ending, right? Like, you've got Gitrog down here, right? Gitrog is 5-mana 6/5 trample haste, and it's not even a top 20 rare in the format. Like, that's that's kind of the level of stuff that we're talking about here, where like you just got these insane sicko cards that just take over the game instantly by themselves, and you kind of can't beat them once they come down. But that's all for me. I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.